The Washington, D.C. museum, where two Israeli embassy employees were gunned down, has reopened to the public. Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky were exiting the Capitol Jewish Museum when a man shot them from behind. The suspect then shot them again after they hit the ground, and then fired even more shots as one of them tried to crawl away. That's all according to an FBI affidavit. The young victims were just days away from getting engaged. The suspect, Elizabeth Vargas, yelled, "Free Palestine," as the police took him into custody. The D.C. murders were the latest hate crime against Jews at a time of record anti-Semitism in America. As of late last year, more than 10,000 anti-Semitic incidents had occurred across the country since the Hamas attacks on October 7th, 2023. That's according to the ADL. Today, speakers at the museum said opening back up to the public should be seen as an act of defiance at a time of intense hatred.
Today's reopening is not simply a return to normal. It is an act of resilience. It is a declaration that we will not allow hate to silence our voices or diminish our commitment to building a better future.
Now, for many people, showing that resilience may be easier said than done. There's a new survey amongst Jewish Americans reveals that 78% of them listed anti-Semitism as one of the top 5 challenges facing them today. More than 80% of millennial and Gen Z respondents said they were worried about it, citing social media hostility and abandonment by progressive friends. Some said they felt isolated. They were even worried about, quote, looking too Jewish. For more on these findings, we have Noa Tishby with us. She is a New York Times bestselling author and Israel's former special envoy for combating anti-Semitism. Noa, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So the group who organized the survey was set up by Israeli President Isaac Herzog. What are people in Israel thinking when they see the fear coming out of the United States?
So Voices of the People is an initiative by Israel's President Herzog, and today we're releasing the study for the first time alongside 18 that shows that the fear is not theoretical. So 4 out of 5 Jews around the world cite anti-Semitism as their greatest concern. This is one of the largest studies ever conducted in the Jewish world. More than 10,000 people and over 80 countries, and we see that we're right to be concerned. What's happening right now across America should warn everybody, because we've been saying this for a very long time. What starts with the Jews doesn't end with the Jews. This is a much larger problem. To answer your question about what people in Israel think about this, they're absolutely shocked. I can tell you that a lot of Jews around the world are blown away by this rise in anti-Semitism. There was a concern that, or there was an understanding that this has been settled after World War II. We thought that we've been over this, but as we see, anti-Semitism is the oldest form of hate and discrimination that's still being practiced today, and today it just shape-shifted into something new called anti-Zionism.
One of the concerns we just noted was that people in cities like here in New York worry about, quote, looking too Jewish. This is sad. That's an awful reality check for 2025. What other findings surprised you in this huge survey?
I think one of the most concerning is that younger kids feel abandoned by their friends. The Jews have always stood by various oppressed communities and minorities throughout history, whether the Black community or any other community, and feeling abandoned by the LGBTQ+ and the Women's March and BLM, feeling like we've got a cold shoulder against us is something that is very concerning. I know this because I do a lot of work around college campuses, and a lot of young kids are very, very concerned about this. And again, when you listen to what that man, that murderer, was chanting, if you've been on a college campus in America in the last year and a half, you recognize not just the words, but the cadence of what he was chanting. And you understand that he heard this on college campuses in America. This is homegrown terrorism, and this is something that should be of great concern to every single citizen, not just Jews.
Some respondents mentioned that they've lost progressive friends. They described it as abandonment. Noa, you're very vocal with this. Have you experienced that yourself?
I have. I have. My first book, Israel, A Simple Guide to the Most Misunderstood Country on Earth, came out in 2021. And I started speaking about these things 15, 20 years ago. And when my first book came out, I started saying that anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism are one and the same. I started saying that anti-Zionism is the new face of anti-Semitism. And specifically, one friend who is extraordinarily progressive basically wrote that if I keep saying that, there's no room for people like him in my life. And that was the last I've heard of him. So we have all lost friends just because we want to be proudly Jewish and because we believe Israel has the right to exist. The Jewish people, just like any other people, have the right for self-governance and self-determination in their ancestral homeland. So yes, I definitely have lost many friends throughout the years, but what can you do? This is what you get for standing for what's right.
You mentioned earlier
about a popularity contest.
Yeah, no, we're learning that the hard way, certainly. We mentioned earlier how the Capitol Jewish Museum just reopened after those brutal killings that you and I just talked about. Jewish temples and events, people must be terrified just to attend a synagogue. Are other areas boosting security because of what we saw last week?
Absolutely every Jewish organization, every synagogue, every event is boosting security. We have been having a lot of security for a very long time. Every single Jewish school that I know of, including my school, has insane security outside. Just think about that. Mosques don't need security. Churches don't need security. They shouldn't need security, but synagogues do. This is the world that we live in today. And again, anti-Semitism is a shape-shifting conspiracy theory. What starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews. The Jewish community is the canary in the coal mine. And if something's starting to happen to the Jews, it's an indication that something is deeply flawed. Something is going on in our society. And I would like every single American to focus on that and know that this hatred is not just about the Jews. It never ends with the Jews.
Now, I have to ask you, do you personally feel safer here in New York City or Tel Aviv? Do you feel safe in New York?
That's a great question. I'm based in LA. I travel to New York a lot. I just got back from Europe. I refuse to remove my Star of David. I refuse to not speak Hebrew on the streets. I know that I'm being recognized. Mostly people are coming up with good things to say, but I've seen some hostile looks and had some people come up to me that are not friends, but I refuse to back down. I refuse to change my life or change who I am or stop being proud of who I am. And I understand that this is very scary for people. And a lot of people are removing their mezuzahs from their homes and not walking around with a yarmulke. But we went to Europe. Friends asked me to remove my Star of David, and I said, absolutely not. I'm keeping it on.
You were asked to remove it. Well, thank you for coming on. This is a problem. Noa Tishby. Hopefully, the more we talk about it, the more we get something done. Thank you again, Noa.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.